Hey there riders, Moto Journo Kris here today, and I wanted to have a chat about Yamaha's R15. This is version 3. It's been available in some parts of the world for a little while now. It's just arriving in Australia, and I gotta say, we're just gonna be looking over the updates of this bike, but I'm really impressed with what they've done. So starting on the front end, as you can see here, it's got that R3, R6, R1 inspired styling on the front end, and it's a lot nicer looking than the version 2. The version 2 at the time when it first came out, I think it was 2013 when it arrived in Australia, was a nice looking machine, but this is so much more refined and it's really got that updated YZF family resemblance, which I do really like. One of the things I will say about this particular bike is it looks very much like the R3. It looks like a full-size bike. It doesn't feel or look like a little 155, and I think that really benefits this machine because people looking for the smaller machines now, they want that bigger bike feel. And it's obviously a styling thing, but it's also, you know, these are under $5,000 here in Australia, and I think for many people, they'll probably find that this updated model will actually do a lot more than they expected. You know, you think about a 155cc and you kind of go, oh, you know, not powerful enough, but I think this will surprise you, and we'll talk about the performance side of things in a second. It's got a 282mm front rotor. It's got Bybre front caliper as well, 2-piston caliper. Interesting to see Yamaha going that route for that particular caliper. Pretty good braking performance on the front end from that. Obviously, you've got these MRF tyres. I do believe they've put some larger tyres on this particular machine, as well as shortening the wheelbase. And I'd say probably shortening the wheelbase has really sharpened up the handling, and then putting the larger tyres on has probably tried to gentle that down a little bit. Those MRF tyres are pretty good. They've had reasonable grip in the wet over, you know, like metal grates and things like that. Not quite as good, but a very good tyre in the dry, surprisingly good for a branded tyre, which really isn't something that most people have probably ever heard of. You've got 41mm forks. In some markets, this actually came with a USD fork, but not here in Australia. It's just got the basic 41mm fork, but that's a 41mm fork compared to the old 33s, and it's you know, got a very good suspension setup for such an inexpensive and such a small capacity bike. Obviously, you've got nice bit of wind protection from the screen, reasonable vision through those mirrors. They're not quite wide enough for me to have really good vision around my elbows, particularly with those lower clip-on style bars. They're just on the tops of the forks, and there are no adjustable levers and no electronics either, while you've just got a really simple LCD display. Now, where the version 3 of the R15 has seen kind of the largest improvement, I guess you'd say, is in the engine, because essentially this is an all-new engine. It's a 155cc, it's running a higher compression, it's got an all-new head, it's got new cooling, new throttle bodies, larger valves, it's got the variable valve actuation system. I think it's about 2.5 horsepower up on the previous model, but thanks to the variable valve actuation, it's actually got a lot more power everywhere, because it allows Yamaha to tune the bike and to design the bike around, you know, a pretty reasonable low to mid range and then a really good top end. And I will say with this bike, I saw the top speed come up when you turn the dash on. It has 155, which of course is, you know, talking about the capacity as well. However, this bike really, I mean, I got it up to 140 quite easily, and the level of performance on offer from this new power plant is really impressive. You'll have to check out my full review to get a full kind of rundown of my overall impressions, but the extra performance on offer from this engine is really good, and it makes a huge difference to me, particularly considering this bike is under $5,000 here in Australia. It's also got a slip and assist clutch now fitted to this, which gives it a bit of a sportier edge, which is a nice feature again. On the chassis side of things, we've covered that front brake. There are new wheels on this bike. They're a nicer style wheel, I would say. They look really good. Still a nice lightweight wheel. Obviously, as I mentioned, they take those larger tires. 815mm seat height. It's on the taller side of things for a small capacity machine, but again, it's very much in keeping with that super sport style of the bike. I also mentioned it's got kind of those low clip-on style bars. They're just off the top of the forks. They're, you know, kind of canted up a little bit and drawn nicely back to the rider. Not super aggressive, but still really staying true to the supersport style of things. The pillion seat has actually been dropped. I think that's 20 millimeters, so it's a bit easier for someone to jump on the back. And you've still got a reasonable reach to those pegs for them as well. And I will just mention that it's actually a bike capable of taking, you know, I'm 70 kilos, I had someone about 70 kilos on the back, and it did that surprisingly well. Here's a quick look at where my feet are on the ground. As I said, I'm 180 centimeters, nice and easy reach to the ground, quite narrow between the legs as well. And as you can see, I can very easily get both feet down flat. It's very natural. Hopefully you can see kind of my whole body positioning on the bike here. And it is really ideal. And obviously, I would say it's relatively relaxed, but it still has that real proper sporty edge to it at the same time. Towards the rear of the bike, we've got a new exhaust, much nicer looking than the previous exhaust, although it does have this big plastic cover on it. It's got this metal style end cap though, looks much nicer. The bike itself doesn't have a huge exhaust note or a huge engine note. You do kind of notice as it gets up to that variable valve actuation changeover point, it's got a little bit of an engine noise. It's almost a rattle, but I don't really, it's kind of like a rattle in the way you talk about like the two strokes having that ring-a-ding kind of thing to it. I think it gives the bike a little bit of character, which is quite nice, and it's not an intrusive kind of rattle. It just, you know, you can feel something's going on there, and it's got a little bit of an induction howl as well. But by no means a super loud exhaust system. As far as the overall bike, we've actually seen it increase in weight. It's up 6 kilos, I believe, to 142 kilos from the previous 136, but it's a super light machine. The way it carries that weight is just incredible. Part of that is no doubt also that it's reduced the tank capacity from 12 to 11 litres, and I've got to say, I've been putting so little fuel into this bike that I'm almost wondering whether it's actually using the fuel or whether it's just evaporating, because the fuel economy seems exceptional, which obviously on a small machine like this is always going to be something that you really think about, because that can save you a lot of money in the long term. Now, other changes on the version 3 of the R15, it's got a new Deltabox frame. There's been some changes there. We've seen the trail reduced as well. And on top of that, you're getting LED headlights, which is a nice, you know, kind of more advanced feature, particularly on a small machine like this. And these are under $5,000 here on the road in Australia. I think they're about 4.8 on the road right away, which is exceptional value. Now, definitely check out my full review. I'm going to go into a lot more detail about how the bike rides, how everything stacks up against the old model and against some of the competition as well. And I think this is a bike which is going to be competing against some larger capacity machines, which might surprise some people. So if you're thinking about buying a first motorcycle and you want something that's going to be really fuel efficient, has, you know, just been updated. Obviously this model's been out in a couple of other markets for a few years. However, this is the first time the version 3's arrived in Australia, and really I think for the price point, it's just packing way more punch than its capacity and price really would suggest. So if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to sub, hit that notification bell, let me know your thoughts down below in the questions. If you've got any questions at all, go right ahead and ask. I'll do my best to answer them. As always, stay safe out there, and thanks for watching.